to another live taping of This Week in Startups. If you don't know, This Week in Startups is a podcast that I've been doing for over 10 years. It started at the early days of podcasting where I just interview my friends, people I was investing in. As some of you may know, I'm an investor in technology companies. I've invested in over 350 of them. Some of them went on to change the world. Most of them, well, let's be honest, they were failed experiments. All the money got burned. And that is what we do here in the Silicon Valley in the technology industry. We back 10 folks. 7 of their ideas, 6 or 7 of them do not work. They fail. It's super depressing. And then we all dust ourselves off and come up with a new idea. Uh, and those founders typically will go on to great success because the precursor to great success is brutal, hard, depressing failure. That's one thing I've learned in my life. And then of those like 3 companies, 1 or 2 will do okay. Maybe we make a little bit of money. Maybe we break even. And then once in a while, we hit an Uber, a Robinhood, a Calm.com, some great company that goes on to change the world. And that makes it all worthwhile. So in other words, we're like little scientists in a laboratory conducting experiments, if you want to think about it that way. And you quickly forget about the experiments that failed. You take what you can learn from them and you just run another experience. It's one of the great things about entrepreneurship in America specifically is that you just get to keep trying to build something interesting. And if you try and fail, your credibility goes up. What other industry is like that? Where you build a startup, you burn your investors' money, all people get is scar tissue, but that scar tissue, when you come into the next round of funding for your new company, builds your credibility. Oh, you failed? Oh, you had to lay off 20 people? Oh, you burned through $3 million of investment. What'd you learn? That's the first question people ask. What'd you learn? What's your next idea? That's why America and the technology industry and venture capital and angel investing is so fucking special. That's why it's so fucking special. That's why all these people criticizing America and criticizing capitalism are a bunch of whiny losers. They're losers who are whining, who don't build anything in the world. All they know how to do is be a professional complaining class and throw rocks at people actually building the products and services that delight humanity and solve our biggest problems. That's what this program is for. The people who like to build things, or at least cheer on the people who are building cool stuff in the world. If you want to complain and whine, please, by all means, turn the dial over to public radio or the New York Times or MSNBC or Fox, and you can complain about the border, and you can complain about the minimum wage, or you can complain about the educational system, or you can complain about higher ed being too expensive. Or if you want, you can listen to this program and talk to the people who are trying to solve those problems through capitalism, entrepreneurship, creativity, and building products. Which is more interesting to you? People complaining and whining and fighting over the tax receipts that come in every year, or hanging out with the people who want to build the future? Well, that's what we do here. We hang out with the people who want to build the future, not the people who want to complain and redistribute wealth and tax everybody and then fight over who's going to get that money. Let's just keep building. It's almost all the problems in the world, and I have a hard time finding problems that can't be solved because of capitalism and entrepreneurship. There are some, but man, even when you look at one that seems out of reach for capitalism and founders and entrepreneurship, like global warming, then you realize, oh, electric cars, solar, batteries, carbon sequestration, people building mock meats that do not put as much carbon because of cows farting into the atmosphere. Like all this stuff adds up, folks. Entrepreneurs are going to solve global warming. That's the truth. All these products and services that are being built to make things more sustainable, that's what's going to change the world. Okay. Sorry to go on a little jihad there, but
Jason,
I thought I would give you an update on how I'm thinking. Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt.
I got a little warning. Did you get a warning?
I did not get a warning.
I got a little red box flashed up in Restream that said "warning, something's going wrong" or something. Then it went away.
Oh, that could be that maybe one of our platforms disconnected and reconnected, but it seems solid this end. There's 2 things though. One, can you confirm your QuickTime? And 2,
QuickTime is not running.
Yeah, there you go. The second thing is, I think I heard a notification from like Slack or something. Could you just
Not for
confirm that
me.
you're
I don't have
okay?
notifications on. I'll make sure they're turned off. But
Okay,
do not disturb is on. So that was not
great.
me.
Okay,
It was
then
one
it
of
was
y'all.
no. I just maybe it's coming from somewhere else, and I just
Yep.
misinterpreted my
No
ears.
problem.
All right,
All
thank you.
right. Hey to my noties. Sorry to go on a little rant there. Patrick, Frank, Jay, Baldo, Barber. First 5 of the Noti gang. Then Gordon, Q, Greg, Chester, Mohammed. Almost. Mohammed said yo. Jeremy said Noti. So those are our next 5. And then for our next 5 Noties who came in, Lita, Serge, Lavenember, Michael, Scott, Purple, new Noti there, Zen Prophet, Hyun, Menez, Jeffrey on Facebook Noti, ENIAC, Spark. God, so many great Noties here today. Richard Wu again. STG80. Bagel time. Francis G. Bonavera, space, host from Restream saying hi, Noti. Oh, that's us. Jeff, Noti. It's just so many great noties here. Sam, I think that's enough. DuckDuckGo episode is lit. Amazing content. Thank you for that. Anybody have a favorite episode recently? Favorite guest? Let me know. So today we're going to be recording. I can't believe I'm with you. I should probably be building. Hey, if you're with me, you're learning about building. So that would be great. If you were a bagel, what kind of bagel would you be? Everything bagel? I can't believe him. That's a pretty good comment. I guess you saw the bagel episode. Was I too rough on her when I told her bagel? Oh, you like the Redfin CEO. Glenn was pretty great. I agree. Have Sachs on the pod. Yeah, I'm on the pod with him every week. I guess I could, but I feel like people maybe hear me and Sachs talk too much. But I could. So my sermon is over for today. I just really am annoyed with the number of people who are complaining. It's too much complaining and not enough building. Yes, we're going to talk about Zillow today on the news. So I'm going to do 2 news stories, and then I'm going to do the startup punch list. So I'll start with the 2 news stories, Zillow's one, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, now we are getting a little drop in quality.
I do see that. I'm on yellow bars. Let me see if I am on high definition 720. You want me to go to standard? No, I'm back up.
Yeah,
Let me
I'd rather
close some
not.
windows.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to close some Chrome windows. I'm going to close my Slack just to get a little extra resources here. And stream is lagging. Thank you for anytime you see the stream lagging, let me know. Now let me see what else I have loaded here. QuickTime and activity monitor. That's it. So I will close my activity monitor because that can use some activity. Then I do not have Zoom loaded.
Any Chrome tabs that are any spurious extra Chrome tabs?
I don't have anything extraneous. Just I have 2. I have 2 tabs open for Notion. I'll go down to 1 for now. And I'll just have news open for now. So I have the Notion one open. And then let me look at. Yeah, that's it.
I wonder whether there's anything else in the household that suddenly just kicks in. Is there a?
No, not really.
I mean, your service is so solid. It's strange.
Yeah.
I'll
It could be anything on the network. I mean, I do have cameras here uploading my drop cams. Like 6 or 7 drop cams in my house. I guess I could. I'm getting 31 megabits, 32 megabits up right now.
And you were doing that while
I'm doing it
streaming,
right
so-
now. I got
Right,
34 megabits. It just finished the test. 5 millisecond latency. I mean, that is incredible. And I'm on Ethernet, not Wi-Fi. So that's pretty great. I drop frames from my MacBook Pro with screen sharing and slacking with others. Yeah. Praying for exits twist interview, please. Yes, I don't know what happened to that. Producer Nick, what's going on with praying for exits? Did you book him yet?
So originally you had asked for him to be on All In.
No. I didn't want him on All In.
Okay.
I wanted him on Twist. So did you stop following up with him?
No, I've never had any contact with him.
Oh, okay. We'll get on it. Everybody wants him. So let's get him on this week in Startups.
Okay.
Yeah, DM. Slide into DMs. Okay. I received 100 messages today with Restream Chat. Oh, I guess we got an award from Restream Chat. That's nice. All right, everybody. Two quick favors. If you go to youtube.com/thisweekin, you can join the notification gang, also known as Noti Gang. And you can join the notification gang by going to the page. Very simple. Subscribe. And then next to it, there's the bell. Hit the bell. You hit the bell, you'll get a notification, sometimes two for me. Whenever I go live, you get a little notification on Chrome or your app, depending on what you have turned on. And it's very simple. Just search for This Week in Startups, subscribe, and you see here in the video, you hit the bell. You hit the bell. Now you get notifications. You smash that bell. And I want everybody to smash the thumbs up. We have 104 of you watching, but only 28 smashed the thumbs up. Everybody pause what you're doing. We'll get started with the show in a second, but I want everybody who's live right now on YouTube to hit the thumbs up. When you hit the thumbs up, the algorithm is looking for, out of 100 people watching, how many hit the thumbs up. And it just went up to 31 from 25 or something. So when that happens, every 5 people who thumbs up, maybe 10 people will start watching. And it creates this virtual cycle because the algorithm will expose this live stream to more people if it gets more thumbs up. So now we're at 43 and 105 people watching. Boom. Now it's 107 people watching. Like we literally have watched this in real time. It's unbelievable, the correlation. Thumbs up for your squad. Thumbs up for your squad. 50 people. And every 25 thumbs up, I am going to get I'm going to answer 2 of your questions. So, and just very quickly to the folks who are posting comments, Ryan Zenprofit, Gordon Gill, shout out Mayor, shout out Dusty, shout out Will Boardman, shout out Donald. Package Randall for Chubby Zion. No. Just because Randall has a bum night or 2 out of 7 games does not mean we're ending the Julius Randle experiment. He is overperforming based on his contract. That is a great asset for us. And just because RJ Randall puts 3 good games together, he also is streaky. We are developing talent at the Knicks. RJ Barrett, puts together 3 sick games. That's a flash of what he can be. And Randall is overachieving, so he will regress to the mean. He'll go back to his average performance of the last 5 years sometimes. But he's an overachiever who cares too much. The reason why Julius Randle, sometimes has a bum night is because he tries too hard. And the same thing with RJ Barrett. Sometimes he tries too hard. That's what you want. If people are trying too hard and they screw up because they don't pass out of a double team, which is Julius Randle's issue, or RJ Barrett gets too excited and doesn't finish strong at the rim, or he overthinks his shot, you'd rather that than have Kyrie Irving, who won't show up for work, or Ben Simmons, who won't shoot the basketball in the 4th quarter, or Zion, who won't stop eating so much food that he put on 100 pounds and his knees are never going to let him play basketball. Those 3 folks are thought of as better players. All 3 of them are thought of as better players than Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. But RJ Barrett and Julius Randle are on the fucking court making it happen. So be appreciative. I don't want to hear any of these Knicks fans. I don't want to see any slander on my timeline or in the chat room about them. Okay. So if everybody in the chat room on, 70 thumbs up and 129 people watching. Can I get everybody who is in the chat room today to tell me what city you're in? What city are you in? And how old are you, if you feel like just saying the number? And then are you working at a startup, or what field do you work in? So tell me those 3 things. City, age, if you're so inclined. And then what do you do? Are you working at a startup? Do you do something else? Hey, there's Toronto. We got a bunch of people in Toronto. Denver, Philly in the house. 33. You can do this in one line. Oh, somebody's in an accelerator. Great. Ben Stacy is in an accelerator. How do you have the energy to knock out these videos consistently? Is 50 the new 20? Yes. I do not have the same energy I had when I was younger. When I was younger, I would sleep 4, 5, 6 hours a night. Now I try to hit 7, but really usually hit 6. But I wasn't as crafty. Now I can, like a basketball player. I don't need to dunk the ball every time. I don't need to be like super spastic high energy. I can just get my way to the basket, back people in, and whatever. So North Africa, wow, finance. Philly, IT. I started in IT. Belfast, wow, working in crowdfunding. and Bridgeport, Connecticut, Bangalore. How cool is that? Student in Texas, cool. Toronto, another student. Somebody works at the Founder Institute. Oh, Ben works at the Founder Institute. That's great for my guy Adeo. I'm speaking tomorrow at Adeo's new Founder University thing for funds. Brooklyn in the house. My brother Jamie. Nice to see you, brother Jamie. Buenos Aires, London, mobile gaming, Dallas, full stack developer. Awesome. Hey, do me a favor to the 142 people now watching live. Smash the thumbs up key on YouTube. Just hit that thumbs up key so other people can find out about the show. Let's get to the news. Okay, Nick, I want to start with Zillow, and then I'll work my way backwards. Okay.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to shift it up there, or are you just going to go
down?
Nope,
I can just go back
cool.
up. Here we go. 3, 2. All right, in our first news story today, shockingly, according to Bloomberg, Zillow has paused their iBuying business and is trying to unload 7,000 homes to institutional investors for $2.8 billion. Zillow shares got decimated. It's down 11.5% on the news, dropping to $85 a share. They lost $2 billion in market cap, and Zillow is going to reduce its workforce by 25% over the next few months. So let's unpack what iBuying is. If you haven't heard this term, it's an industry term in real estate. Basically, it means that a bunch of these websites that like Redfin and Zillow would buy homes to flip them. Just institutionalized buying of homes, single family homes specifically. So Zillow ramped this up after buying about 700 homes in 2018. Of course, there is the company Open Door that Keith Raboy, friend of the pod, did, and that went public. I don't know if Chamath did that SPAC, but they went public via SPAC.
He did.
And
IPOB.
IPOB was Open Door, really clever idea. I had Keith Raboy to talk about that company years ago on the pod. But basically, Zillow will offer homeowners. Zillow offers homeowners the ability to request an offer on their house. Then they use an algorithm to generate the price. If that price is accepted, Zillow sends an inspector to confirm the status of the home. Zillow pays in cash if the inspection checks out, and then they make repairs and put the property back on the market. And they were targeting like 4 or 5% at scale. Obviously, as I said, Redfin and Open Door have similar programs. But on October 18th, Zillow put out a statement that Zillow offers would not be buying any more homes in 2021. They said, quote, due to a backlog in renovations and operational capacity constraints, they were going to stop the program. In other words, they bought homes that needed renovations, and operational capacity to me means they weren't executing at a high level. And I heard this from the grapevine that one of the things that iBuyers were doing was they were buying homes that they really didn't understand. In other words, let's say a home had noise at night because it was near, I don't know, a construction site and all the trucks came back. They might send an iBuyer out there. That person might sell it to you, and there was negative signaling. In a market that is so vibrant like today with low interest rates, home buyers are going to go look at 20 different homes, put offers in on 3, and visit the top 3 homes 3, 4, 5 times, talk to the neighbors, do their research. iBuyers, maybe they weren't doing this kind of research. They send out an inspector. The inspector says the house looks okay. They don't know that the people next door are renting in an Airbnb, or that the people 2 doors down are maniacs who play, heavy metal all night long or throw parties constantly. That's something that a local real estate broker, and listen, hey, I think real estate brokers get paid like huge commissions, and I'm not crazy about that, especially on the higher end homes. But to their defense, they do know which houses are dogs in the market. So there's a data advantage for Redfin, Open Door, and Zillow, but they might not have the qualitative thing. So that's what I heard on the back end. And I don't think that kind of news is out there. And I don't know that that's specifically true, but I suspect that has something to do with this. Because if the home was super high quality, it's on the end of a cul-de-sac, it has a great view, I don't know, the lot's flat, all of that put together would make for a more educated buy, right? And then maybe Zillow became the buyer of last resort. We see something similar in negative signaling in venture capital. You go to the top firms, they all say no. You go to the second tier firms, they all say no. Some new firm meets the company. They don't have the reputation yet. They take a chance on a new firm that the other firms passed on, or a new business model. And that could either work out for them, but in most cases it wouldn't. And that's why reputation matters, and inside information matters, and network matters. All of those things add up to better decision making. So perhaps the issue here is Zillow made bad decisions. They thought through data that they would know because of their estimates. They can always tell you the value of homes. And so in a 2006 Zillow blog post, when they talked about Zestimates, and I've had the CMO from Zillow on the podcast previously, and she talked about Zestimates. That was very controversial. Remember when that first came out, where they used taxes and sales data to try to figure out how much your house was home? Well, maybe they got ahead of their skis here. Maybe they were too confident that they could make these decisions. So, for the first 13 years, they were a marketplace, and they just did lead gen, right? When you see brokers on the website, it says book this house with this broker. That's not the broker representing the house. That's somebody who paid for that placement. And if they get that person a new client who's interested in the home, they get paid for lead gen. And I don't know what it costs per lead gen, but I'm thinking it's tens of dollars. A pretty good business, I would say. So the real estate average, I'm going to leave this section out. Zillow also started offering adjacent services like mortgages. So, they talked about the Zillow 1.0, where they got consumers to, and connected them with professionals. But their Zillow 2.0 model, as they presented it, was, hey, we're going to help you shop, rent, buy, finance, all the adjacent services, sell your home, and just whip these two concepts together in some really ambitious flywheel. And then they opened this, iBuying program. When Zillow launched their iBuying program in 2018, Glenn Kelman, friend of the pod, he was recently on episode 1261. I've offered, begged, asked the Zillow founder to come on the program 10 times. They offer me their number 2 or 3 person. Obviously, we're not going to do that. So I just don't think the Zillow founder likes me. He says he doesn't have a problem with me because I asked him, do you just not like me? Why won't you come on the program? But I think his media people don't like me, or maybe they think I'm going to ask questions that would be too sharp. And, it's the nature of being an interviewer. If they don't like me, I'll just talk about them and not tell their side of the story because they won't come on the program. It's kind of frustrating for me that they won't, because I kind of respect the founder of Zillow. I do. And I got a credible story, and he's been on other podcasts. So when I see a founder on other podcasts, they won't come on this one, and I've asked them 10 times, at a certain point, I just give up, and I've kind of given up on the CEO of Zillow ever coming on this program. And I just assume it's because I said something in the past that maybe was too sharp elbowed, and we'll just have their competitors on. Glenn loves to come on. Other people, Keith Raboy loves to come on, and we'll tell the story of real estate without the CEO. And not that I'm bitter or anything. I'm a little bitter about it. I'm kind of bummed about it. Should I take that personal? I don't know. I kind of take it personal when somebody doesn't want to come on. Like Palmer Luckey doesn't want to come on the program because I said something about Oculus or something in the past, or when he left Facebook. But I think Palmer's like a fascinating guy. I'd love to have a conversation with him. So the CEO of Redfin then who was on episode 1261. Great guest. Glenn Kelman has been on this program, friend of the pod. He's been on a half dozen times. He is awesome. He spoke with the New York Times and warned about the dangers of pouring money into homes. Quote, without having a clear idea of how you're going to make money on almost every single home, if that happens, he said, you're just putting the housing markets, the capital markets at some degree of risk. And this is the criticism of Zillow, was like, we're in a housing crisis. For some giant company to start taking homes off the market, same criticism of Opendoor. It was like these iBuyers are exacerbating the housing crunch. So I think that might be a little bit of it too. Maybe Zillow realizes this is a tough business and you become hated. Maybe regulations will come, like the government will intervene because of it. So according to Bloomberg's reporting, Zillow is looking to sell about 7,000 homes to other institutional investors to get them off their books. Again, the number of those 7,000 homes is 2.8 billion. Hey, to my internal team, just a programming note here. Whenever we have those two numbers, can you just do the math? Divide 2.8 billion into 7,000, and then we could do back of the envelope. So always think back of the envelope. Okay, end editorial note. Zillow's current market cap is 21 billion. That's down 50% from their peak valuation of 48 billion in February of 2021. So Zillow has lost half of its value. Wow, in a year. And no, I'm sorry, they've lost half their value since February of this past year in 6 months. Wow. According to research firm Yipit Data, I've never heard of that firm, Zillow put a record number of homes on the market back in September, but it appears they are not being sold at a profit. According to a study of 650 Zillow-owned homes done by KeyBank Capital Markets, 2/3 were priced for less than the company bought them for. So Zillow is going to take a big write-off here. Obviously, this is a huge mistake, a blunder. But what I will say is no risk, no reward. So while it's easy to kick Zillow when they're down here, they took a bold bet. What if it paid off? And it's a minor charge for a company that's worth 21 billion to take a $500 million or $1 billion charge. I would rather see a company taking big, bold bets like this than not taking them. You got to take bets in business. You got to keep shooting for growth. And so Zillow did pause buying before all this back in March 23 and 2020. When the COVID stay-at orders kicked off, they quickly sold off. They quickly sold off as well. So I think that this is a great learning experience. Period. End of story. And good on Zillow for trying. And maybe they just think their other model, or they have another concept they want to iterate on. But they bought houses for $400K, and on average, if you take the 2.8 billion and divide it by 7,000, that's the mean, not the median. So I don't know what the most common home price is, but it looks like they bought first-time buyer homes, starter homes, which is smart because that's what the world needs more of. But it's hard to do everything, and boiling the ocean is hard. I think maybe Opendoor, since they only do one thing, maybe they'll be successful at this, where Zillow had a harder time with it. Also, I think maybe Zillow looked at their existing business model and maybe they were pissing off real estate brokers, right? Maybe this was creating too much tension of them being the owner and seller, because if they're the seller, well, then they're fighting against other sellers in the market. So let's think this through in a gamesmanship theory or game theory, which I'm not an expert on. But if you're the agent representing a home and you are a seller's agent, you are selling to Zillow, which means when they sell it, because they're flipping it, you don't get the chance to represent that home again. So every time you sell a home to Zillow, by definition, you're removing a piece of inventory, or you sell it to any iBuyer, you remove a piece of inventory that you'll be able to represent in the future. And many times, I think you've probably seen this, a real estate broker will represent the same home 2 or 3 times. I know when we bought our home, one of our homes, we then tried to sell it with one agent. It didn't sell. And then we went back to the agent and said to the agent who sold it to us, hey, you sold this home before. You know the home. Would you like to sell it again? And so I think that that's a strategy that would then make selling agents not want to work with Zillow. So then maybe the selling agents were trying to offload bad inventory to Zillow to sink them. It's kind of like a very clubby thing, these real estate brokers. I think everybody knows when you are in the process of selling a home, the brokers in many cases are working with each other. Some might say colluding, others might say facilitating. It could be just facilitating most of the time, and sometimes colluding, to try and get the buyer and seller to just do a transaction by any means necessary. Because remember, the incentive is to close any transaction. It doesn't matter what the price is. You just got to sell it. The price doesn't matter, right? If they sell a home for, if there's 6%, if you sell the home for $1 million, you make 60. If you sell it for 900, or if you sell it for 900 or 1.1, which is a 10%, 20% swing in prices there, it doesn't really affect their commission. It's still going to be plus or minus 10% of 60,000. It'd be 54 to 66,000, right? So it doesn't really matter. The commission of 54 to 66 being split 2 ways doesn't matter. Any number in there is good. So that's kind of my feelings on the entire industry. Okay, let's go to our next story. Good. Anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, if you want to do a
Or
plug
pickups?
for Noti Gang, we got a good question that I think
Okay.
you could answer.
Sure.
If you want to say, hey, I'm
Oh
going to
yeah.
take a quick question for the live audience, blah, blah, blah. All right, I'll
3,
pull it up.
2. Okay. And, some of you might know who are listening to the podcast that every day or 4 days a week, I record these newscasts live. And I just got in a great question from one of the Noti Gang members. And the Noti Gang member, Jeff, says, Cal, do you think iBuy is a fundamentally unworkable idea, or did they not just execute well? I'd say it's the latter. I think it is a hard business. It's an operational business to be in, and you have to be relentlessly focused, making sure every single home is a tier one, top tier home, not a home that is a dog. And Keith Raboy had a note about this just recently, saying selling or shorting Open Door due to Zillow's flaws and is akin to shorting Google due to Yahoo's inability to monetize search well or return long tail queries properly. And I think he's probably correct. If you look, Yahoo was doing 20 different projects and search was one of them. And Google was doing one project, search, and they were just 100 times better than, or maybe 10 times better than anybody in the market at that time. Maybe they're 20 times better now. So focus matters in startups. And this seems to be like food delivery or Airbnb, an operationally intensive business. And in operationally intensive businesses, ones that exist in the real world, you just got to have a really sharp blade. You cannot be fighting 5 wars on 5 fronts in this kind of a situation. You just got to do one thing better than anybody. So I would be long Open Door, and actually I'd be, for doing iBuying, and I would be long Zillow for getting back to their original model and just owning that one. So lick your wounds. You get knocked down 6 times, you get up 7. Zillow will be fine. And that's my way of trying to get the founder and CEO to come back on the podcast, which probably won't happen.
We love you, Rich.
We love you, Rich. Come on the pod. Everybody do me a favor who's listening. If you know Rich, tell him to come on the pod. He's got so many great startups that he's done, and he's friends with like 10 of my friends, Bill Gurley, everybody. Come on the pod. I'm not going to bite. Don't send your number 2 or number 3. I mean, I'll take your number 2 or number 3 person after you come on the pod. I'm like willing to horse trade that way, but I'm not horse trading up. No, not at this point in my career. I'm not horse trading up. I'm not having your VP or president on in order to get the CEO. I'll get the CEO and then maybe as a favor down the road, have the president on. I think I'm cool with that. But I'm not horse trading up. I'll horse trade down. All right, next story.
Good.
I like talking about how the sausage is made. All right, stablecoins. Here we go. Talk about stablecoins. Yeah, if you guys have really tight questions, that'd be great, and I'll include them in the podcast. 3, 2. Okay, we've been waiting for this. On Monday, the Biden administration released a report on stablecoins, which recommended that Congress act quickly to regulate them. We knew this report was coming, and I have to say, kudos to the Biden administration for getting on top of the crypto market and starting to think about what the downstream ramifications could be of delaying regulations and having unclear regulations. Delaying means there could be a big hole if something blows up, and that could create a contagion, or it could be a black swan like event. That's what delaying has done to us. We should have had this stuff during the Trump administration. I'm not saying that this is a left versus right thing, because I actually don't think it is, but I do think that this wasn't a focus for the Trump administration. It seems to be a focus for the Biden administration for some reason. And I think that's a good thing. So delaying is really bad because this is growing so quickly that that's like delaying doing a building inspection until they put the 100th floor on the building. Like, you really need to do the building inspection when they're putting the foundation in, right? Does that make sense? So now we have these giant skyscrapers and we don't know what's going on in the foundation. And God forbid they didn't build a proper foundation. The whole thing could come tumbling down. Second, unclear regulation means people are going to take crypto companies and put them in the Zerg or Panama or other places and other jurisdictions that basically inoculate them from regulations or exacerbate bad behavior. And that then makes it hard for people to believe in the crypto space. So there were a number of groups who worked on this, a bunch of different acronyms. The PWG, President's Working Group on Financial Markets, FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the OCC, the Office of Controller of the Currency. I've never heard of that one. And so if you just want to understand stablecoins, we're somewhere around 140 billion of these, and the trading volume is something like 780 billion according to CoinGecko. Again, that's just a source. I can't validate how good that source is, but the total crypto market, according to CoinGecko and some of these other sites, is something like 2.8 trillion. Now, that number isn't real because that doesn't mean that you could sell all those coins and get $2.8 trillion. You know that when you start a program, let's say I own 50% of the coins and the coins start getting bought over the next 2 years and they go up 10,000%, 100,000%, right? They go up 1,000x, whatever it is. Those 50% of coins they never transacted, right? So this is why sometimes these market caps are fugazi or not representative of reality. Solana comes to mind. This thing has gone up super quick. If everybody who owns Solana at a penny tried to sell it now at $100, the market would tank and go back down to $1, which wouldn't be enough buy side. So these are very weirdly traded currencies. It's the equivalent of in the stock market when you have a small float, right? If you had 90% of people were the insiders who owned a company and only 10% was being traded by the public, how representative is it if you're only trading 10%? If that other 90% suddenly came on the market, would the price collapse? In all likelihood, it would, unless it was such a great company that people really wanted to own it. But even in that case, the supply would outstrip the demand in all likelihood. So stable coins are somewhere maybe 5 or 10% of the market, depending on how real that $2.8 trillion number is. So the report, and I perused it, I didn't read the whole thing yet, was pretty favorable about the applications of stablecoins. Quote from the report's press release, stablecoins could be more widely used in the future as a means of payment by households and businesses. That's an incredible statement. The government really shouldn't want stablecoins being used instead of US dollars. So they're saying that's a possibility. In other words, maybe you'll pay your phone bill or your mortgage in stable coins because they reduce bank fees. That's the big thing here. The banks have this big infrastructure. They're regulated. They have high costs. They have high fees. They're slow. They're only open a certain number of hours a day. You've sent a wire. You've been through this nonsense. Stable coins just boom. You send them. It's basically free to send. They're like poker chips. They are very easy to transact with. Now, the US government is going to need to have a US dollar that can trade like stablecoins eventually. But the banking industry has no interest in doing that because that would break their monopoly on money transfer and make it harder for them. So I think we all understand what's going on here. You got these rebels and stablecoins, and then on the other side, you've got regulated banks. And this report says, hey, listen, we need to have centralized legislation for this. And you know what? Who can disagree with that, given the bad behavior and given all the fines piling up and all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt about Tether? Hashtag Tether investigation. So some quotes from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. The absence of appropriate oversight presents risks to users and the broader system. That's pretty obvious. I think everybody agrees with that. Current oversight is inconsistent and fragmented, with some stablecoins effectively falling outside of the regulatory perimeter. Again, you don't really need much evidence of this. We had Jeremy Allaire on the program, and he's trying to figure out, how do I do this with the highest level of regulation and compliance? I would say compliance. So Jeremy Allaire was on this program. Tether's folks weren't. That tells you everything you need to know, because I asked Jeremy as hard of questions as I could, and he came on the program. He said he'd come on the program, and he did. He wants to see regulation, and he wants to have clarity about that. As I started off with this segment, you really want to have clarity if you're a good actor. Why do you want to have clarity and regulation as a good actor? Because it gets rid of bad actors who might be cutting corners. Who is the canonical example of the bad actor in this? Clearly, it's Tether. And I don't have to worry about getting sued because Tether is banned from working with citizens and companies in New York. They've been banned. So they are bad actors according to New York State. They are bad actors according to the Canadian regulators because they won't let them trade. And they just got a huge fine of over $40 million. The company, obviously, Tether is a big part of this. People saw Tether go up to $70 billion. And although people who use Tether feel comfortable with it, I think it would be more comfortable for society writ large and for the industry to have this highly, highly regulated. Specifically, the report called for Congress to address these three following concerns. Number one, risks to stablecoin users regarding stablecoin runs or bank runs. Basically, make sure that all stablecoins are fully backed. So if people started pulling money out of Tether, is the money there? Well, if Tether says they have low single digits of actual cash and then all this like fugazi, potentially fugazi, unknown commercial paper, which are loans to companies, and they said they have them in China, but maybe not Evergrande, it's just too much risk. So stable coins should be dollar for dollar backed, no funny business. Why do people do funny business like Tether? The theory is they want to get a higher return. So if you agree your coin is worth $1, you give me the dollar. If I go invest that dollar in something that's paying 20% a year, I sweep the 20% return on your dollar. Now, if I put it in something safe and I only make 1% on it or 50 bips, half a percent, okay, I left the other 19.5% of returns. I'm not going to make as much money. So there is a perverse incentive for stablecoin, people running stablecoins to make risky bets. But that's not what the buyers of stablecoin want. They don't want you making risky bets. If they did, they would have bought Bitcoin or Ethereum to begin with, which are risky bets that swing. So it's supposed to not swing. Number two, concerns about payment system risk. Basically, stablecoins, according to this report, the people who provide, basically, the report recommends that stablecoin wallet providers, think Coinbase, Robinhood, whoever, be held to the same standards as stablecoin issuers like Circle. Seems fair. If you're going to be, holding these in wallets, you're going to need to know who the buyer is. You're going to need to maybe have some insurance on it, etc. And then point three, concerns about systemic risk and concentration of economic power. They want to ensure that no stablecoin or wallet issuer develops a monopoly. How do you do that? Well, according to the report, legislation should be able to limit stablecoin issuers' affiliation with commercial entities. In other words, no sweetheart deals between Circle and Coinbase. So if Coinbase accepts Circle, they got to accept every other stablecoin that is regulated. That makes sense to me. I would even take this a bit further, which is stablecoins can grow at a certain rate or hit a certain percentage market share. So if we know there are 150 billion, why don't they say, for your stablecoin, you can be no more than 50% of the market? I know that seems anti-capitalism, that the best company should win, but we kind of want a diversity of providers here. So if any one of them goes bad, they don't take down the whole system. And, the market may very much want to have a monopoly because monopolies is, kind of how you reward the winner. So this is a very delicate concept here to say, not that we're going to pick the winner, but we're going to pick the percentage the winner can have. That is a controversial concept, but it is how some countries deal with monopolies. What percentage can the winner have? Korea does this, as my understanding, with like SK Telecom could have a certain percentage of the mobile market. Supervisors should have authority to promote their interoperability among stablecoins. That makes sense. And a limits on users' transaction data. What does that mean, Nick?
Limits on the use of users' transaction data.
Sorry, I misread it. And finally, limits on the use of users' transaction data. I don't know exactly what that means. But maybe it means like using it to upsell them. Unclear what that means. So this is great for crypto. If crypto is too big to not be regulated, crypto is too big for there not to be some rules of the road, and we have to get the bad actors out of crypto. Tether is a bad actor. Clearly, if the CEO won't come on this program or won't go on CNBC, they're bad actors. Period. End of story. You can't be CEO of a company that has $70 billion in assets and not go on major programs or talk to the press or be in hiding or be, in Hong Kong or some authoritarian country and then do business with the rest of the world. If anybody's a bad actor, they should be banned from working with any US entity, period, end of story. Tether should be banned from working with any US regulated entity as quickly as possible until they are audited. All of these services need to be audited. They should not be allowed to operate or grow until they're audited. If you're not audited at $1 billion, let alone 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, then you're just not worthy of our trust. And if people outside the US would like to have an untrusted system, you know what that says to me? Who wants an untrusted system? People probably who have money that they're washing or they don't want other people to track, i.e., the black market. One of the things I've heard that's good about crypto and might be a conspiracy theory of why governments are allowing this kind of behavior, in other words, unregulated exchanges, unregulated tethers of the world, stablecoins, is because the bad actors, in other words, dark money, the dark economy, the underground economy, human trafficking, terrorism, drugs, whatever it is, just people who are money laundering, gambling, all that stuff could be being washed in crypto. Regulators are watching that. Regulators have tapped into that and have ways to track it, right? Because there are ways to track it. And when they see those transactions, they're finding out who those people are. They're finding the dark money. They're finding out what wallets these things wind up into. And they're going to just keep busting people and getting information. Just like, the Southern District of New York had microphones and informants and did wiretaps for years before busting the New York mob. They understood everything about the New York Mafia by the time they busted them in the 80s and into the 90s. That could be what's going on here. And then also, if all this money from the underground starts to get into crypto and then you tax crypto, well, that would be a way for the government to get their hands and start taxing illegal revenues. So those are just two theories that some insider floated with me that I thought seemed credible. Whenever I tell you something that I think is a theory, a hypothesis, or a back channel, I'll present it as such on the podcast, right? I'm not telling you that this is a fact. And just like when I mention somebody who gives a statistic, I'm always going to tell you if I think that is a real statistic or I know the source or if you should trust it, right? I think in all news, you have to assume the information is incorrect or could be massaged or might have an agenda and try to triangulate around what the truth is and just think from a first principles basis. Should somebody be allowed to have $70 billion under management and not be audited? First principles, no. It's too big of a footprint. Too many people can get hurt. Would you let somebody have $10 million in some crazy cockamamie NFT, platform? Sure. If it's in a sandbox and, the amount of fraud that could occur and the worst possible situation would be 10 million would be lost. You do have to think about that, right? It's like speeding. If somebody's going 15 miles over the speed limit, do you pull them over if you're a police officer? Probably not if there's people going 30 and 40 and 50 miles over the speed limit. You probably want to address those first. If you only have a certain number of people you can pull over a day, you want to start with the people going over 100, then people over 90, and then people over 80. And that's why I set my Tesla to be speed limited at 80, because then at 76, it starts warning me, hey, dude, pump the brakes. Okay. What other types of crypto regulation would I like to see? Well, I've talked about this many times, and I just referenced it. Let's create a staged sandbox here in the United States where you can file with some agency and say, I'm doing a crypto project. It might be a security. It could be a utility token. And under 5 million, experiment all you want. People buying into it, sign a waiver. They understand that this is an experiment. And there's, at least 3 people's name on it, an accounting firm and a lawyer who certifies something about the project. Then when or maybe like it's just the 3 founders sign off on it. When it's 25 million, now you have to have an attorney and an accounting firm sign off on it. You have to agree to do a monthly P&L, know your customers, have a database of transactions, whatever it is. And then when you get past 50 or 100 million, you become fully regulated. Something like that, to me, sounds like a way to combine what the Zerg and other crypto free states or open trade zones are doing. And we kind of want to have that here in the United States. So let's create an open trade zone based on the scale of a project. You release $5 million in tokens, you're good. Just put your names on it. Make sure you incorporate it, have $5 million in insurance. That costs $50,000 a year. You get to 25 million, the insurance goes up. You got to have an accountant and a lawyer, and you got to do some sort of auditing, and you just scale it from there. So good job for the Biden administration on this one. I don't agree with them on everything, obviously. But I think what we're seeing here is the CBDC is coming. We're going to have a central bank digital currency, just like China. China's approach has been to kick out cryptocurrencies and make them illegal so they could have the renminbi, the digital renminbi. And they're forcing people before the Olympics, like McDonald's, to accept it. And then the Fed coin will come here in the United States. How is the United States going to do it? They're going to regulate it. And don't be surprised if they tax it next. So a very simple thing to do for these stablecoins is, if you want to track in a stablecoin, every time you send a stablecoin from one place to another, you pay 1% or 10 bips in a tax to the government. That would then disadvantage people from using those. It would pay for regulation. It could be some sort of, crypto tax, as it were. And then that would incentivize people to use our Fed coin. I'm not saying I endorse that, but I can tell you with 100% certainty, the government is not going to give over the sovereignness of the dollar to crypto. They're going to tax it. They're going to regulate it. That's going to create costs, and it's going to slow things down. It will create friction, and that friction will then drive people to the Fed coin. That's my personal cynical belief of what's going on here. China, you don't have to have a cynical belief about it. They just cut the head off crypto. Get the Bitcoin mines out of here. It's illegal for you to trade crypto. You can own it for now, but you're going to use the digital renminbi, and that's it. Game over. All right, let's move on.
Great. I have the intro up top.
Okie dokie. Intro time.
Mei Xiao.
Jake L is definitely a spy from the CCP. I am the opposite of a spy. I want to do this quick question about the can $6 billion save world hunger? Okay, here we go. Intro time. 3, 2. Okay, amazing show for you today. Wait, where's the news stories? I like to mention the news stories first and then go into the thing. 3, 2. Okay, big news day today. Zillow has paused their iBuying business, and they're trying to unload 7,000 homes they bought. Their stock is off 50% this year. Bit of a disaster over at Zillow. Next up, the Biden administration has released their reports on stablecoins. And so the noose is tightening on Tether and people like Circle. We had Jeremy Allaire on the program recently, who want to see the industry regulated and who want to be in compliance. I think that they are going to soar because of this. And I've got some conspiracy theories I float during that segment about what's going on with China and the US with their Fed coins and how they're both approaching the decapitation of crypto in China and the regulation of crypto here in the United States. You'll see if you believe my conspiracy theories. And then I'm having the founder of Lead IQ, Mei Xiao, on the program. We invested in this company back in 2015. They just closed a $30 million Series B. I invested in the company 6 or 7 times, trying my new betting strategy, which is keep betting on your winners. So we talked to Mei about her journey from being in our second accelerator cohort when she had 2 customers and 500 in revenue, and then hitting 8 figures in revenue and raising a huge round. She's a great entrepreneur. A really must listen for anybody in SaaS or anybody building a company. Stick with us.
Great.
Okay. Good energy. Okay.
Checklist.
We got to do the checklist next. How are all my noties doing? Is it checklist for tomorrow?
Nope. Thursday.
Like, no, do it. I have 250 people watching right now. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody who's watching, do me a favor in YouTube. If you could tell me,
Thumbs up first.
Well, I was going to ask him for the thumbs up second. Everybody who is in the chat right now, let me know what you think of Meta, Facebook's big rebranding. What do you think about the rebranding? Why are they doing the rebranding? Is it to get people to take the heat off of Facebook, or is it because they want to get the company organized around the virtual world? What do you think? Okay, and then next up, if I could ask everybody who's watching, about half of you have smashed the thumbs up key. Every time somebody hits the thumbs up key on youtube.com/thisweekend on this live stream, it will send the algorithm at YouTube will send it to more users. So it creates a virtual cycle. I see we have 135 thumbs up. If I could just get 25 people to hit the thumbs up right now out of the 241 people watching, that would be magical, because we'll all see that more people will see the episode here. Because we are at 141 folks listening, who have thumbs up, and 240 who are watching, I will take 3 questions. If we hit 150, we take, for every 25, I take a question. So at 150, I'm going to take 6 questions. Gets to 175, I'll take 7 questions. I'll answer any question about anything you have. So 156 thumbs up. Great job, everybody. All right. So now we're going to go through the startup checklist. If you are a founder, this is essential for you to know about. We are going through basically, where's my show notes here? We believe in this concept of a checklist. There's a book called The Checklist Manifesto that I heard about from Jack from Twitter. Basically talks about how people who, let me do this on air. But basically it's a checklist for founders to make sure they're thinking through their startup and to make sure they don't have some blind spots or they overlook something. So here we go. Time for us. Great comments on Meta, by the way. Basically, Zuck wants to get out of the regulatory hoops, is what everybody believes. I agree. Walk me through my mental health journey in the past 20 years. Sure. That's an interesting one. So, which section I am in now?
Number
team?
5.
Number team. We're on 5. Okay.
Building a great team.
All right. So where am I here? Okay. Okay. 3, 2. Okay, everybody, welcome to episode 5 of our startup checklist. These are 100 bullet points that you can go through with your team, with your co-founders, and just check each one to make sure you're thinking about every single aspect of your business and you're not forgetting something. The reason we came up with this was because we read a book called The Checklist Manifesto, had a profound impact on me and my team. Essentially, if you create a checklist, your rate of failure will go down dramatically. If you try to remember all the things you have to keep in mind, well, you're going to crash the plane or you're going to kill the patient. How do we know this? Well, in the book, The Startup Checklist, they talk about how they created checklists and procedures in operating rooms and lowered the number of people dying from things like septic shock when you get bacteria in your bloodstream. Or they had a story in that book about how they kept crashing airplanes with 4 engines on it, and they thought pilots would never be able to fly a 4-engine aircraft. When they created checklists and they had the pilot and the co-pilot and maybe the navigator all working through checklists saying, okay, flaps up, check. Okay, speed indicator, checked. Okay, oil indicator, check. Then they had less accidents. It turns out the pilots who winged it would sometimes forget to check the oil, or they'd check that they had put the landing gear up or down or the flaps, and then they die. Well, startups are not a matter of life and death, thankfully, but if you have a checklist and you go through it, the chances of you forgetting something really important will go down and your chances of success are going to go way up. So in the previous weeks, we covered building a great product and we did last week. I want to do all 4. Okay. So in the previous 4 episodes, episode 1, we did qualities of a winning founder. Basically, what do you have to do? What do you have to have inside of you in order to win? Episode 2, we did another 10 checklist items around business model. Episode 3, we talked about your customers. Do you understand who your customer is? Do you know how to delight them? And that's part of the startup flywheel, right? Is customers. Then episode 4, we talked about building a great product. Again, that's part of my startup flywheel, customers, product, team. And today, episode 5, we're going to talk about building a great team. Again, a flywheel is something that once you get cranking will pick up speed and it will grow, hopefully violently and delightfully and just uncontrollably. If you get your team right and you get the team to build a great product and you delight customers, that compounds itself because the customers give you money and they give you data to build a better product. And if you have a better product, you get more customers. And if you have customers, you get money to build a better team or give raises to your team or give them more resources. This should all be self-explanatory, but many of the founders I talk to, I will have a half-hour conversation with them. They don't talk about their team. They don't talk about their product. They don't talk about customers. They talk about market size and competitors, and they're not focused on these three important things. You can see the entire checklist at thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. And you can print it out and you can, take this and copy it and rehash it, build your own blog post, tell me what we got right, what we got wrong. You could create bullet points under it with your own checklists. We did all this on Notion. Feel free to create a new copy of the page. All I ask is that you link back to thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. So we hope this is a living document. I'm probably going to look at this every year and edit it and change it based on what changes in startup land. So let's get into building a team. This is critically important. Okay, now I need to find the notes on building a team. Where are those bullet points?
So you have to hit the toggle and then it'll pop down and then you'll have 41.
Oh, let's 50. Get into it as a toggle?
Yep.
Got it. Okay, I got it. All right. 3, 2. All right, the first question I get all the time is, do you need a co-founder? If you're a first-time founder, the simple answer is probably yes. It's really lonely to start a company and it's super stressful, and having a co-founder will make it less lonely and less stressful, especially if you can divide and conquer. Maybe you're great at fundraising, you're an extrovert, you love traveling. That's a full-time job. And then maybe your co-founder is an introvert and they love product and they love studying the metrics and they don't care about going on the road and they freeze up when they're put in front of a group of people in a boardroom trying to take their money and they don't like to ask people for money. Plus, speaking of money, VCs expect you to have a co-founder. Why? Well, if one person quits, you got a backup plan. This is why VCs, accelerators, always want to see 2 or 3 founders. If it doesn't work out, they got a backup plan. Remember, they're putting in millions of dollars. It would be kind of like going on safari and you're driving through the desert and you're, Land Rover Defender and you don't bring a spare tire. You kind of bring 2 spare tires, don't you, when you're going out into the, and you bring a air pump and you bring a kit to fix flats. They want to see some redundancy. They want to see a backup plan. Most startups don't work. Everybody knows that. If you're betting on a solo founder, you're basically doubling or tripling the risk. So if you have empathy for investors and you just think if you were on that side of the table, when they see a solo founder, they think, no bueno, this is too much risk. And they have other choices. So they have other teams that they can invest in that will have multiple founders. So therefore, you're going to lose in the zero-sum game of getting money from investors. Again, it's a zero-sum game. If they invest in one company, they may have the money to invest in a second or third company, but they don't have the time. Time's the gating factor here. If you don't have a co-founder, it's incredibly hard to find one. You have to convince somebody to go on this journey with you. You have to know and pick them as if they were a spouse. And most people find it from having worked for 10 years with other people at another company or on another project. So you're going to have to take some risk, have 3 people, but you vest. So if one person doesn't work out, or if a 4th person doesn't work out, their stock options go back in the pool. Maybe they vested 1 out of their 4 years. It's hard to find co-founders. And if you can't find one, you kind of failed the first test. It means you can't convince people that your idea or you are good enough to go on this crazy adventure for. And that's where you have to reflect and look deeply inside yourself and say, what is it about me that people don't want to come on this journey with me? It might be that you're not credible enough, in which case maybe you want to go build your skill stack and learn more skills, or maybe go work at a company and build your credibility. Okay, so that's point number 41 on our overall checklist, and the first point we're going to do today. Okay, item number 42 on our checklist. Do you know how to make your first hire? Do you even know who the first person you can hire is? So you have to, in the marketplace, get somebody to quit their job and come work for a startup that is high risk. This is not an easy task. So let's assume you have 3 co-founders, right? You're going to have to assess, well, what do the 3 of you do really well? And are there any glaring holes in your team? So let's say you have 2 developers and somebody who is a great sales executive who's doing the fundraising, and they're the CEO, and one person's the CTO and the other person is the president. Okay, what are you missing? Maybe you're missing a designer, somebody who's great at UX. Maybe you're missing somebody who's great at customer support, customer happiness. You're going to have to look and decide who is the best person to help. It might be just another developer. It might be a sales executive because you have a great product and you need more people to sell it. So it's also going to cost money. So you might want to get the product to the point at which you've raised money, or you have your first 2 or 3 customers and you've got a little bit of money coming in. Because what you don't want is to have that person sitting there doing nothing. Or you don't want to hire somebody for so far below market that they quit. And so it can be a difficult thing to figure out. Once you've raised money, well, then you should start thinking about, hey, where do we need to be in 18 months? Hopefully you've raised 18 months of runway. Where do we need to be between 12 and 18 months when we start the fundraising process again? Will we be at break even and we don't need to raise money, or profitability? Will we be burning $50K a month but have 10 customers who are spending $10,000 a year with us? You want to really do a little bit of a plan there, and the plan will then dictate what you need. So if you're trying to get to $10,000 a month in recurring revenue, $1,000 a month per customer, 10 customers, well, you're going to need to sell those 10 customers. Well, you're going to need to have 2 salespeople if your salespeople sell 1 person every 2 months. Or you're going to need 1 person if they sell 1 person a month. You get the idea. And so let's move on to checklist point number 43. Do you know what positions to hire for first?
You kind of just combine the two. It was supposed to be, do you know when to make your first hire? And then do you know what positions to hire first?
Yeah,
so,
that is.
I think what we can do.
Yeah.
Well, you basically just did both of them. So I think what you could do is say, hey, I'm going to cover points 42 and 43 together real quick. Let's knock them out. It's going to be, who should you hire first, and what position or when should you make your first hire, and what position should you hire first?
Yeah. These are too similar to be 2 different points, to be totally honest. But okay, I'll do what you're asking. 3, 2. Okay, I'm going to take the next 2 checklist questions. I'm going to bundle them together. The first is checklist item number 42. Do you know when to make your first hire? Checklist item number 43. Do you know what positions to hire for first? Okay, we've talked about that first hire. You really want to get somebody who is filling in basically for the 4th founder position or the 3rd founder position, and who's going to move the ball forward. Now, once you've raised money, now you have to start thinking about what positions you're going to hire first. Sometimes you're going to need to hire a lot of people in one group. If you are an AI company and you're doing machine learning, that's going to take 2 or 3 people, right? So you may need to hire them before you do anything else, because you're pre-product market fit and you cannot get the product complete without those 3. And you're going to need to think about, well, when are you going to start the sales process and the marketing process? One of the most frustrating things for sales and marketing people is to come to a company before they have product market fit, before they finish the product, because they're going to sit there twiddling their thumbs. What do I do? Write marketing materials? What do I do? Create ad creative when we haven't finished the product? It's incredibly frustrating. Same thing would be true for a customer support rep. Well, if there's no customers, what's the rep going to do? Be very careful to not hire too early. Conversely, if you've got the sales team out there selling and you don't have customer success and customer support in yet, you are quickly going to be faced with churning customers. This is where a plan comes into place. If you make a plan for how many customers you're going to have, how many you're going to add each month, well, you've set a target. I want to add 2 customers a month. Okay, our sales executives can do 10 meetings, can land 10 meetings a week at scale, but they ramp up to that. So let's just put it at 20. We'll cut it in half. They're going to do 5 meetings, 1 a day. We think that's what we can book. Okay, we know that every 20 results in 1 sale, so we need 2 salespeople. Over time, Great salespeople will become more efficient. Maybe they'll get 30 meetings and therefore they'll start signing 1 or 2 customers a month. Okay, great. So you can kind of model that. You also know that salespeople turn over quickly because in a lot of cases, they might not be missionaries. They might be mercenaries. And so you might expect a little bit of a higher turnover rate. Therefore, you're going to say for every 3 sales executives, we expect 1 to not make it past 3 to 6 months. Therefore, our hiring plan is to hire 6 salespeople to get to 4. And if we happen to get to 6, we'll be delighted. That means we have to hire 1 every month for 6 months so that in month 7, we have 4 up and running, landing 2 customers. If we are, in fact, landing 2 customers each and we have 8 coming in a month, we're going to hit this amount of revenue. And we're going to need ballpark, 1 customer success person for every, 10 new customers a month. Great. And we're going to need to have a customer support rep. You get the idea. You're going to really want to think through a plan. And when you have a plan like that, the goals you set in the plan will determine the resources needed. In other words, the human resources needed, the positions needed. Some you can outsource, most of them you cannot. Accounting you can, legal you can, HR you can, like sales you can't. So keep that in mind. If you can outsource, certainly accounting, legal, are always, and human resources are almost universally today outsourced in the first 2 years. Okay. When you're starting out, people tend to hire generalists and then specialists. What do I mean by this? The first 5 employees at a company tend to do 3, 4, 5 jobs each. Then over time, you get to 50 employees, and those 30 skills, you tend to have 1 or 2 or 3 people working on each one. What's an example? Well, when you're starting out, you might have an operations person. They might do HR. They might do the accounting. They might do legal. They might do fundraising. And they might manage the office if you had an office. And they might also do IT. Company hits scale. You tend to have an IT manager, an HR department with 3 people in it. You'll have an accounting firm, maybe an internal bookkeeper. You get the idea. That's why it's great for founders to work at a start. That's why it's great to be an early, if you're ambitious, it's great to be an early employee at a company because the generalists get to do so many jobs. However, if you do not quickly become a specialist, you will get replaced by a specialist. That's why you see some people who do 4 years at companies and then go to another startup. Why? They like the 0 to 1 function, going from no product to having a launch product, from no customers to a customer. And that's okay. Those generalists are awesome in the world, but they tend not to be specialists. They may not like to do one thing 50 hours a week, which is what you need at scale. Okay, so what do you need early? You really need developers and product managers early. What don't you need? HR, lawyers, PR. That stuff comes later, and you can outsource that stuff. Keep in mind the bar raiser hiring process at Amazon. Every person you hire should be better than 50% of those in similar roles. Basically, the concept of hiring is, if you have the resources, you want to hire people who you can learn from as the founder. So I always try to hire sales executives or operational people who have done more of that than me. Now, I'm 50 years old. I've done a lot of this stuff. So the chances of, as you get older and wiser and you got more scar tissue and you've done it multiple times, the chances of having somebody you can learn from as in a hire goes down, but I still find them. And it's really great when I do. So hire those bar raisers, especially if you're a first-time founder. And when I was a first-time founder, I had Carol Martesco, Elliot Cook, a lot of people around me who knew much more than I did about running companies, Joanne Wilson. And they basically were able to pull me up and say, hey, schmuck, here's how this works. And I'd say, oh, thanks. I had no idea what the difference between accrual and cash-based accounting was. And they had been through that 10 times. And they're like, do this, do this, do this. And I was like, okay, I'll just listen to them. And it was great for me. Okay, let's go on to checklist item number 44. Should you build a distributed team? In today's marketplace, you may have no choice but to build a remote team because people don't want to come to an office during COVID. Let's assume the pandemic turns into an endemic and we get past this and COVID is no more than a typical cold or that these vaccines work to the, with the Nova and other vaccines coming out. So to date this podcast and when it was taped in 2021, in the fall of 2021, we're still dealing with the pandemic. So that affects the advice here. Distributed teams are fantastic because you're not hiring people within 50 miles of your office. And they're challenging because you have to know how to manage remote workers. You can't, as somebody who's not a developer, manage a remote developer credibly because you can't look at the code, you can't see what they're submitting. But if you are a CTO and you're a developer, you can. If you're a CEO, can you manage a sales executive? Actually, you can, because you don't have to look at code. You can just look at the calls, and you can look at the CRM system, the customer relationship management. It should have all the emails in there. You should be able to look at the contracts. So there are things that founders can manage that other people can't. Now, there is a disadvantage, I think, for the founders not to be in the same room, to be bonding with each other and building a culture. It's hard to build culture remotely, so you're going to have to invest in that. But boy, you're going to save all that real estate cost. And the real estate cost in these early stage companies, if you're spending $10K on an office, that could be 2 more salespeople, at $60K all in with some commissions on top of it. Or it could be your, third developer. Now, the third developer is like, oh, it's just one more developer. No, it's 50% more developing capacity. So let's pause for a second. It's not one developer. If you have one developer and you add one developer, you have 100% more capacity. If you have 2 developers, you add one, you have 50% more capacity. Is some flashy WeWork office, no offense, or some warehouse worth it? Or is 50% more or 33% more or 100% more developer capacity a better thing? I think we all know the answer to that. And speed is super important. So you really want to be able to move fast. If you can hire somebody from anywhere and get them today versus wait for 3 months, you may only have 6 months of runway, man. Keep moving. And you need to know how to do Slack huddles, weekly team calls, quarterly team retreats. This best practice is being built in real time. I think you have to embrace remote because startups need to move fast, and remote means fast, and startups need to compete. If you don't accept remote workers and Google and Facebook are accepting remote, man, you're at a serious disadvantage now. You have to press every advantage you have as a founder. Remote work is an advantage. You're going to have to level up as a founder and figure it out. If you can't figure it out, don't be a founder. Go work for the post office. Okay, checklist. No offense to post office workers, but it's different. Okay, checklist item number 45. Do you know what to outsource to freelancers and how to outsource to freelancers? This is critical. There are things that will take a lot of work, a lot of time, but they're not strategic. If it's administrative, repeatable, one-time, outsource it. What's an example of that? Well, we needed to research all the founders in Australia. And so I went on Fiverr, or I shouldn't say I went on Fiverr. One of my team members went to Fiverr. We hired 2 different people. We said, hey, here's a database. Make us a database. Read the news in Australia. Do Google searches for startup founders. Use Crunchbase. Use PitchBook. Use anything you can. Find us all the accelerators. Look on their portfolio page. Find us on Twitter, every Australian startup. Put them into this database. Try to guess the person's email. Confirm the email. Because we want to invite them to come to Launch Festival Australia. And man, we started on third base. I could have had my internal people do it, but I wanted them picking the speakers, finding a location, and doing the marketing. Now, you might be able to hire a freelancer to find locations. You might be able to crowdsource that. Sales, building product, probably not a good idea. Product, customers, team, right? That's what I talk about with this flywheel. Product, customers, team. Don't outsource. Recruiting, customers, and product. Anything in there is kind of the secret sauce, right? Those are the 3 legs of your stool. You rip off customers, you rip off product, you rip off team, the stool falls over. If you have an outsourced product team building, they're not full-time, they're not dedicated to you, they work on a project basis, that might be fine for building your MVP, but honestly, it's a major red flag, like 10 red flags if you can't build the product in-house. Because every investor knows we give you $250K, you give it to your outsourced development firm, and then development stops. Okay, I give you $500K, give it to your outsourced development firm. You got to have that in-house. Same thing with customers. If you're not talking to your customers and somebody else is selling them, you've abstracted that layer. That's why all those rep firms that called in the early days of This Week in Startups and said, hey, can we sell your ads? I said, no, I want to have a sales team. I want to know who the advertisers are on the podcast. I want to meet the advertisers myself. I actually do onboarding calls with each advertiser, which is kind of intense given how many we have now, but I still try to do at least an onboarding call with them so they know me. I can let them know I appreciate them. I can hear from them what their goals are, and it just increases renewal. So even I take this hard medicine of really getting to know the customers, even though it's time consuming. And let's face it, a lot of other podcasters think they're above it. Like I don't think, every podcaster of note or of my stature is getting on calls with advertisers. I still do it, and I'm going to try to keep doing it. Team, same thing. No offense to headhunters, please don't start emailing me, but if you're outsourcing headhunting, it means you don't have a great culture. It means you don't have a company that people want to work for. It means your mission is not good, and you're probably going to get people who are not great hires. You need to have that muscle internally, work that muscle internally, get good at it. Product, customers, team, in-house it, everything else outside. HR tools, Gusto, amazing. They just get everything done for you. These PEOs, etc., Rippling, Zenefits, all these places are great at that. Outsourced accounting, tons of places to do that for you. And with outsourced services, people look at that as efficiency. You don't need to rack your own service. You don't need to build your own HR department until you hit, massive scale. And even then, HR you want to bring in-house, probably 50, 100 people is what I hear from most founders. And building your own server farm, unless there's some super compelling reason to do it, you're probably not going to be able to compete with Google Cloud or Azure or everybody else trying to lower the costs of doing that. Okay, item number 46 on our checklist. How much do you pay early employees? Do you know how to manage your bankroll and not have to pay a fortune? You are going to be unable, if you're a seed-funded company, to compete against Google and Facebook. You should not try. When you're interviewing somebody and they say, hey, I have a Google deal. Hey, this is my LinkedIn deal. Here's my Microsoft deal. You just have to say to them, we can't compete with that. If you're going for max money, you should go work there. If you're going for max impact, you should work here. And immediately sort them out of your process. Immediately. I literally had a founder say, hey, this person's got a competing deal with Google. How do we compete? I said, you don't. You don't. If that person wants max money, just tell them this is not max money. You're going to make half as much cash comp, and you're going to get, the chance of getting the lottery ticket at options of a company that's currently valued at $10 or $20 million or $50 million or $100 million. If you want to go work on making, billions of people click on Facebook ads, 0.001% time, go ahead. If you want to change the world, please do that here. That's the difference. Do not try to compete against those. Now, you want to do the best you can. And so what you can say is, listen, we are seed funded. We've raised $1 million. We know as a developer, you can get 200, 250 working at that company. We can offer you 150 or 125. You're a salesperson. You can work there. You can make 150 working at Twilio for your base salary and then get 2% of sales to get you to 250K. I can pay you 75K, but I'll give you 10% of sales for the first year, and we'll see in year two. So, 10% on 500K or $1 million would be 50 to 100K. You get to 125, but we want you to give you stock options and you can grow from that. So I think you have to be creative. And then when you get funded with more money, you can go back and remember those conversations and give people raises. And you can be much more aggressive in your raises when you start raising more money. If people are going for max money, you just have to accept in the startup world that you will not be able to compete. Period. End of story. And don't try to. You can always also look for, if this person's a VP of sales and you can't get them to leave some SaaS company doing 100 million in revenue, who's two steps below that person? Is there a sales executive who wants to be the sales manager? Is there a sales manager who wants to be your VP of sales? That's the way to do it. Is you take somebody who's the 6th, 7th, 8th player on the basketball team, but not in the starting 5, and you say, we believe you should be a starter On our team, you'll be a starter. So sometimes in the NBA, they'll say, hey, this person is going to go to this team to chase a ring or to be on a team with a winning record. Oh, this person is going to go to a team because they want to be the man and have the ball in their hands and be starting and playing 40 minutes. So they're picking the team not based on how much they can get paid, all things being equal. They're picking it based on the role. That's what you're looking to do, is find people who want to be the man, or that's in the case of the NBA, or the woman in the case of the WNBA, who want to shoot their shot, right? And who want to get more minutes on the court. And that's what you're selling. And if people are mercenaries and they want to go for money, just cut them off immediately. We can't compete with Google. Where our offer is going to be on a cash compensation basis, far below Google. And then stop talking and see what they say. And they say, oh, well, I need to make max cash. Can you match them? And you say, there is no way we can match them. Period. End of story. Okay, let's go to checklist item number 47. Do you have a plan to give each employee the right amount of equity? Do you know how much equity to give to your early hires? This is where working with your attorneys and your venture capitalists can come in handy. Putting aside co-founders for a second, there is a schedule as the company grows of how to give this equity. If a person is coming in as a co-founder and you're splitting it three ways and they're there at inception and they're all vesting, 4 co-founders, 25% each, and then you give 10% to the employee stock option pool, you give 20% to your investors, everybody takes a 30% haircut, 30% off of 25%, you get the idea. You're going to start getting down into the teens, and then eventually each of the 4 co-founders is going to own 4 or 5% of the company. If it's 2, they might own 10% each by the time the company gets sold or goes public. If it's a solo co-founder, they could own as much as 15 to 25% of the company. Very rarely happens. There are tons of websites that will break this down for you. You need only do a Google search or look on those websites. But senior engineers in the early stage, they could get 50 bips to 1%. A VP, somebody in a top 10 position, like a CTO, VP in the early days would get low single digits, 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, vesting over 4 years. People who are junior engineers, they might get 10, 25 bips. Mid-level engineer, 25, 50 bips. When they say bips, that means fractions of a percentage. So 50 bips is half a percentage point. 25 bips is a quarter of a percentage point. So not 1%, 50.50. And then, other folks junior people might get a token 5 to 10 bips. It's very limited equity, so you really want to be smart with it. And then you want to look as time goes on and say, hey, when do we need to ask our board to give us more equity? Because you blow out your ESOP, employee stock option pool. That first ESOP should last you through the Series A. Maybe the Series A, you would top it off 5%. And then that would come either before or after the financing. Some of the investors, if they're giving you a Series A term sheet, says, we want you to take, everybody on the cap table takes the 5% hit, then we put our money in. So they're not buying 20% of your company and then immediately losing a point, right? So they want the equity refresh to happen before that. So there are little issues like that people negotiate on the margins. But you want to be generous, but realistic. And you want to have a plan for where this is going to get you. And that's where having a great board and advisors and people who have done it before comes in really handy. If you go to thisweekinstartups.com/basics, we did a stock options episode with Becky DeGraw from Wilson Sonsini. Amazing episode. An amazing takeaway from that was selecting for your 83B provision. This is crucial for founders, employee stock options, because it gives you the option to pay taxes on the total fair market value of your stock options at the time of the granting. If you don't elect this option, you're going to owe taxes on your stock after every new round of fundraising. It's a really challenging thing. Just bring up 83B with your startup lawyer so you understand it. Vesting schedule, 4-year commitment. That means you divide the number of options into 4 years, that you're going to get that amount per year, but a 1-year cliff. So you get nothing until month 12. After month 12, you might vest monthly or quarterly. In other words, you would take 1/48th of the option grant. So if you had, let's say, 0.98, just to make it easy, 0.98 of the company. 48 months means you're getting 2 bips a month. So after you get that first year, then you get 2 bips a month. What that means is it's being fairer to both parties. If you don't stick around a year, you're that lame, or we're that lame as the company that you don't want to stay, you shouldn't be on the cap table. But if you do get to month 13, we had a good enough time to get to know you. You had a good enough time to get to know us. That's plenty of time. You get that big 25% equity grant. And then after that, you go monthly, so that if you were to leave in month 7, you're not sticking around to month 25, which is in the bad interest of everybody if you shouldn't be there, right? You don't want a dysfunctional employee who's sticking around for a long time. I actually, in my venture firm, I have people vesting in 6-month clips and year clips for the funds. Why do I do it that way? Well, I want people to take a 10-year view of working in venture capital, not a monthly view. If you're in it for monthly, you're in the wrong thing. You have to think in a decade like I do. I think in 2-decade periods. Anybody who's working for me on the venture side should be thinking in a decade-long period of building a venture firm to last, and building a syndicate to last at thesyndicate.com, and building wealth that is generational. I want people on my team thinking about making millions of dollars, tens of millions eventually, and moving up the stack from researchers to associates to principals to managing directors, so that they can eventually, buy $1 million or multi-million-dollar home. You can only do that if you're around for 10 years, because these investments take 10 years to mature and you have to vest them. You get the idea. So some people do 5-year grants now to keep people even more invested. It's interesting stuff. You can build an org chart with your board. This is like board level discussions that you'll get good at eventually. Number 48 on checklist. Do you know when to start thinking about culture? Day one, think about the culture you want. And the culture should be about you and the founders. What makes you want to come to work every day? You do not have to make a culture that is for everybody. That's a mistake. You want a culture that works for you and your co-founders, and then employees second. Why? If the employees love the culture and you don't, you're going to quit. I need you to come to work every day, the founders to come to work every day. If you work hard and you believe in being relentless, great. If you, on the other hand, believe in 6 weeks of vacation and people turning off their computers at 5 and not checking email on the weekends and life-work balance, and you have the opposite of that going on at your company in either situation, you now have conflict and dissonance. Your employees want life-work balance. You are working every weekend and nobody's responding to your emails and Slacks at 9 p.m. You believe in taking the weekends off and stopping work at 5, and you got go-getters on your team who are emailing you at night to close a contract and over the weekend, and then they're like, well, this person's not moving fast enough. I've lost employees because I didn't move fast enough, and I've lost employees because I moved too fast. It's like Goldilocks. Some bosses are too hot, some are too cold. You got to get to that just right moment. The just right moment happens because of alignment, and you got to write it down. So for me, I like people who do not need to be managed. I like people who manage themselves. At a certain point, when we were doing more remote work and I was trying to manage more and more people, I said, I want a culture where everybody comes into Slack every day and says, a transparent culture, this is the 3 or 4 bullet points I'm working on. At the end of the day, they say, this is what I got accomplished today. And they linked to the documents in Notion or spreadsheets on Google Sheets, or the Asana board, the Zen, the CRM system for sales, whatever it is, so that everybody was super informed. I had 2 people who refused to do it. They don't work for me anymore. Great. One of them said I was micromanaging. I'm not micromanaging. I'm trying to have you manage yourself. Well, I can manage myself. I'm like, great. Then spend 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at the end of the day just saying what you're doing and what you got done. It turned out that those 2 people, in hindsight, in the debriefs with their coworkers, were the least collaborative and didn't work as hard as everybody else. Great. There was tension there. I want to have things outlined of what people are getting done. Now, the reason I'm doing that is not to micromanage. It's so I don't have to do any management. That SOD and EOD program I wrote about on my blog, you can type in Calacanis SOD EOD, start a day, end a day. If you just type that in, and we'll link to it in our notes here at thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. That SOD EOD program was embraced by the high performers and people who wanted to advance their careers. And it was framed as micromanaging by people who wanted to be professional managers and not do work and felt certain work was beneath them. It's that simple. And great, it's my company. So I get to choose. And I chose that. And if people didn't do their SOD EODs on some consistent basis, it just didn't work out for them here. And that's fine with me. I do it at both companies, actually. And what everybody says is our communication and our execution is higher because of it. Great. And there was one or two people who said, I feel like my SOD and EOD are really light. And I said to them privately, so you feel like you're not contributing enough? And they're like, yeah, I'm really worried. I'm like, what are you worried about? I'm going to fire you. You're going to fire me and you don't need me. I'm like, what if you raised your hand and said, can I help anybody with any projects? I have some extra time. They're like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm like, why don't you try it? They tried it. They got included in more projects. They learned more and they loved the job. Now I have the opposite problem. I have some people who are so hardcore that their end of days, end of weeks have too many things on them. They do too much. And I have to tell them, can you take a vacation? Like producer Jackie, who's now a managing director. I'm like, Jackie, I'm getting these notes about how many days you have off accumulated. Do you want me to give you that as money? Or would you take a goddamn vacation, please? And I got her to take some days off. So I actually had the opposite problem. Now, that does not mean I'm advocating for 996 either. It just means I'm looking for hardworking people who manage themselves. If you're not a hardworking person, you don't manage yourself, this is not the company for you. There are places where people get put into very specific silos and they get managed and they're not allowed to do things in other verticals. How many friends do you have? Or maybe you had this experience. I'll ask the people who are watching live right now. How many of you had the experience where you did extra work and somebody told you, please don't do that. That's not your responsibility. That's this person's job. That's what I was getting told my whole career. And you know what I said to that? Well, that's stupid. I literally said that to a manager. I was like, well, that's dumb. I have extra time. I want to do more work. Why wouldn't you let me do that? Well, that's their job. Well, what about the company? That job's not getting done. That work is sitting there undone. Like I literally am setting up computers and then there's servers to be set up. And that person went home. And the servers are still in the box. And I took them out of the box. I cleaned them. I racked them. I put the NIC cards in, network interface cards. I set them up. And the next day, I got yelled at for doing it. And I said, but it's done. And they're like, it's not your job. I'm like, but it's done. And now we can do the next job and get the fuck out of here and I'm sorry, bleep that out, but get the fuck out of this job and go do the next one and make more money for the company. And I worked late because I wanted to go watch the Knicks game and eat dinner. This is in the 90s. I was going to go watch the Knicks game at CCC and go have some food and expense it on the company. So I cost the company $40 for my dinner, and I got a Lincoln Town Car home, and I stayed here until 9 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock, and then I watched the second half of the next game. It was literally a true story, and I almost got fired. I was like, I need to go work for myself. It's just some people, So anyway, back to the checklist item. Do you know when to start thinking about culture? You want to do it early. You can look at all the different ones that have been done out there. You can read all the books about it. What's essential is that you write down, at our company, this is what we value. And this is our culture. And you can change that. It can be a living doc. But if you don't write it, then when you hire people, you can't show it to them. And then you hire the wrong people and they say, well, I believe that I should not check my email on the weekends. And it's like, in a finance business or in a sales position, if you did that, oh my God, you're gonna lose. So you have to write these things in a way that are shared with people. I have another friend, conversely, who said, I have a highly profitable business. I don't want anybody stressed out. I want to have everybody delighted. So I am purposely going to hire 50% more people than I need in customer service. I'm going to tell them they can do as long as they want on the phone with customers. They can call customers proactively and they can set their hours. Literally, a friend of mine did that. And they let people set their own hours as long as they put in the 40 hours a week, and they shouldn't do overtime. They were told not to do overtime. And they had the most delighted customer support staff in the world that was overstaffed because they were wildly profitable. You ever go to a hotel that's a 5 or 6 star hotel, like Aman Hotels or the Rosewood Hotels? I think they're called 5 star, and I think Aman is 6 star. Anyway, those hotels, you'll have 4 people clean your room at the same time. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Am I in trouble? 4 people walked into the room with the Aman Tokyo at the same time. And I was like, this is crazy. It was a $1,500 a night hotel. I treated myself. I was there for book tour. 4 people you are not needed, but that's the way they do it. They want your room turned over in like the least amount of time possible, and they go crazy cleaning everything like maniacs. Different businesses can have different philosophies of how to do things. One might be going for, we're going to start knocking on your door. You ever have that knock at 8 a.m. at a hotel and they're like, housekeeping? You're like, at 8 a.m. Really? And then they come back, housekeeping, 9 a.m., housekeeping, 10 a.m. I'm like, oh my Lord, please stop doing that. And they're like, well, we have to, housekeeping leaves at 4 o'clock. Therefore, we have to get your housekeeping done by then. This is a stupid example of 2 different styles of businesses having 2 different priorities. One is efficiency and cost to keep the prices low, and one is luxury and making the person feel cherished and not caring about efficiency. 2 different strategies. If you mix those strategies in the same culture, it creates chaos. So as the founder, please define your chaos early. And frugality is one. Amazon is frugal. Other places might not be. Okay, checklist item number 49. Do you know when to fire an employee? If you think there's a question, if there is any question, there is no question. When you have a question about an employee and you don't think they should be there, get rid of them. It literally 90 times out of 100, your gut's correct. Now, there is a process legally of how to do this to make sure you don't get yourself in trouble. Work with your HR department. But almost universally, people hold on too much longer. I used to think about creating performance improvement plans, and trying to be this master motivator in my, 20s and 30s. And then I said, you know what? I'm not here to motivate you. If I have to motivate you, I can mentor you, but not motivate you. If you are not driven, hardcore, if you don't learn, if you don't have a love of learning, if you don't have a love of becoming better at your job, I cannot put that in you. That was your parents' job. That's your job, is not my job. I can give you goals, targets, support, and mentoring. Those are things I can do. And so what you need to do when you're thinking about firing somebody, ask yourself, like, which bucket is this falling into? Is this something intrinsic about the person? They're lazy, they're not thoughtful, they're not type A, and they're in a type A position, or they're not customer facing. They shouldn't be a customer facing person. They're angry, they're curt with people, they're bitter, they're not a good communicator. They get annoyed by people. They get frustrated. They get misinterpreted. They're an introvert, whatever it is. They're not they should not be customer facing. And then you have other people who are super customer facing. Like maybe you hired the wrong person and their alignment's not there. You can't change that. You can't take a person who's curt and make them courteous. It's just too far of a bridge to cross. Now you could take somebody who is, affable and make them delightful. You could take somebody who's delightful and make them effervescent. You can, on the margins, train people on how to be 10, 20% better at something. It's very rare you can get somebody to take that huge jump. So ask yourself, is that even going to happen? And again, be professional, be graceful, give people severance unless they've done something wrong and you're firing them for cause. And even when firing for cause, you can talk to your human resources department about this. But when you fire somebody for cause, if you say, hey, it's not working out, we'd like you to resign. And if you resign, sign these papers and we're going to give you 2 weeks severance, or we're going to fire you for cause if you don't want to sign these paperwork. Like, there are people who do that kind of a situation for like, here's your exit ramp and here's the alternative. I think that's becoming a bit of a best practice. In all cases, don't gossip about people. Don't give people a hard time. Don't say bad things about people specifically. When I talked earlier in this program about people who didn't enjoy working under the SODEOD, I didn't mention which company it is. I created an amalgamation of that, and it was years and years ago. So like, you wouldn't hear me say this person. So you'd have to guess it's one of these 10, 20 people. You don't ever, ever, ever want to put yourself in a position where you're bad-mouthing a previous employee. It just makes other employees think that you're going to do it to them. Be graceful, be professional. If other people on your team are bad-mouthing a previous employee, you can say, you know what? We made a mistake, and put it on yourself. Or they did the best they could. We're happy they found a better fit. you got to kind of move into that. When I was younger, man, I would get angry when somebody would leave the company. Man, I would be like scorched earth. Can't believe this person left the team. I just had a very like cutthroat attitude about it. I've since moved on from that. And I've even had boomerang employees. I've had great employees who've left. And I said, oh, I'm really disappointed you're leaving. Would you like me? I literally said this to somebody recently. Would you like me to fight to keep you here? Or would you like me not to fight to keep you here? And they said, no, I've made my decision. I want to go. And I'm like, great. If it doesn't work out, I've always got a spot for you. They were like, they were just like, J. Cal, I love you. Okay. Be classy is another way of saying that. Now, if somebody steals from you or otherwise does something, absolutely, there's a different checklist item. You are within your right to pursue legal remedies or do what you have to do to fire them for cause. And I wouldn't say badmouth them, but you also are not obligated to give them a positive reference in the future. I think the best thing to do to lower your liability is to just decline giving a reference for somebody who did something bad with you. That speaks volumes. Think about it. If somebody worked for you for 2 or 3 years and then you don't give them a reference that's glowing, what do you think when you're in that situation? It's pretty much the ultimate tell. If you call up somebody's previous employer and they're not willing to get on the phone with you and you email them or call them 3 times and they don't call you back, it means that person is not endorsing the person. That's the non-endorsement. They would not hire the person again. Okay. Item number 50. Are advisors valuable? I get this all the time. Checklist item number 50. Are advisors valuable? Well, let's define what an advisor is. Are they somebody who is willing to put their name on your company if you give them 50% of your company for free upfront? That's kind of marauding. That's not adding value. Let's say that person is going to get 50 bips at your company for over 2 years, vested monthly, 1/50th every, or whatever that is, 1/48th of it every month. And you have a scope of work of what they're going to do. They were a VP of sales. They're going to help you write sales material. They'll interview your final candidates for your sales positions. They'll give you 2 hours a month and 1 quarterly on-site 4-hour lunch brainstorming session. Okay. Then you could say, okay, the 50 basis points is currently worth $50,000. And when we become a $100 million company, it'll be worth $500,000. Therefore, $50,000 for their services. If it fails, $500,000 if it works out, great. I'm going to hire that person as an advisor. Make sure you document everything nice and tight. But these generally do not work to make a huge difference in the company unless you're actually getting value as a founder. If you're doing it to impress investors, that's not going to impress us in 99 out of 100 cases. It might open some doors, but generally speaking, I think people overvalue it. If they're valuable to you as a founder and they're willing to put in, at least an hour or 2 a month and at least 50 hours a year total with you, like a week a year, maybe 30, 40, 50 hours a year between lunches, dinners, phone calls, then I think it's worth it. There's some trade going on here of actual value. You can see the Founder Institute's FAST agreement, F-A-S-T. It's basically a founder advisor standard template that my friend Tadeo came up with. Most people use that. And you just have to have a candid discussion. Hey, if it's not working for you, then you should cancel it. And if it's not working for us, we are going to cancel it. So we're not giving you free equity. So that's what I can tell you about advisors. Wrapping up here, we're halfway through the series. I am so excited about you trying this out and giving us feedback. You can always email producers@thisweekinstartups.com. That goes to all the producers and to me. Let's make sure that goes to me too. I want to see the things people are emailing, producers@thisweekinstartups.com. And you can visit this checklist at thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. It's on Notion, so I think you can cut and paste it or make a new page, edit it for yourself. We're going to put check boxes on it. We'll put our notes on it. We're going to make this a living document. I think we should make the page so people can comment on it, and we'll edit the comments in real time. The last 3 segments have been about the startup flywheel: customers, product, team. Really think that through. You might say team, product, customers, because it tends to go in that order. Team, product, customers. Get that flywheel going. Stay focused on that. When you are talking about your team, when you're talking about your product, and you're talking about your customers with investors, with potential employees, with the press, you'll see how they respond. When you talk about everything else, not so much. Okay, in episode 6, we're going to work on the market. There's a reason why we put market after team product customers. It's because that's when you should start thinking about it. After you have your team product and customers, you got to really think about the market, your total addressable market, competition, and that kind of stuff. So episode 6 is coming, understanding your market. Thanks again to our team. I know a lot of people on my team, Jackie, Ashley, Charlie, Nick, Presh, Marine. I'm not sure who else worked on this, but a lot of folks worked on this internally to distill our knowledge. And maybe we'll make it into an ebook someday and keep editing it. But thanks again for tuning in. Okay, to my noties. I'm going to answer a couple of quick notey questions. Question number 1, do you think Apple will develop the Apple Car, and what impact will it have? Let's do that one first. You ready to put it on the screen? Anybody want? Hey, Rachel, read it to me, or Nick.
Do you think
Okay, Jason, Rachel, I didn't know you were here. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, let's take a question from the Noti Gang, the Notification Gang on YouTube.
Do you think that Apple will develop the Apple Car? And if so, what impact do you think it will have?
And who's that from?
That question is from Bob Gee.
Oh, he's part of the Noti Gang. I see him every time I do a live stream on YouTube. Okay, Apple is developing the car. We know that because we've seen all these talented people go back and forth from other car companies to Apple. So we know that that project, I think it was called Project Titan in the early days, is happening. It would be, along with AR glasses, an entirely new platform. Now, making cars is hard. I would think that Apple would make an operating system and design the car and then partner with a Volvo or a BMW, more likely, since that was Steve's favorite car. He drove BMWs exclusively. Or they could just buy it. Given the amount of cash they have, they could buy BMW. But they like to build things. So I think what you could see is some sort of combination of a joint venture that could wind up in an acquisition, or maybe they buy 20% of BMW. I always felt that they should have bought Tesla in the early days when Tesla was a $50 billion company. I wrote a blog post back in the day. Apple should buy Tesla for $75 billion. I thought that would be an amazing purchase. It would have been, obviously, because if you have all these Apple stores, imagine they each had a car in it, and your phone, your car. Already, I can tell you my Tesla app and my car are simpatico. And, you know, the things I'm getting feedback in my app for Tesla about my driving. I control my audio and video security system. All of this stuff is now integrated, and it's getting more integrated, let alone when self-driving works and your dashboard becomes a screen and you're watching movies and playing apps in your car. It's obviously going to all come together in the next 10 years, 20 years. So I think it's 50-50 if Apple will come out with one. It's 100% certain that they'll keep working on Apple CarPlay and making that more rich and making the operating system. But it's hard. It's hard. And so I think they would have to make some acquisitions or do some major deep joint ventures. Good question. Okay. You got another question for me? I'll take it. You can pick it. All right, let's take another question.
This question is from Patrick. JCal, I have a question about your view on Tether and the whole crypto market. If Tether was deemed to be a fraud, do you think it would significantly harm the entire crypto market and value?
It's a great question. That is the contagion concern that people have. Here are a couple of different theories. There's $70 billion in Tether or so in the market cap. And the people who are using it don't seem to have a fear of using it. At the same time, Circle's stablecoin is booming and is clearly going to pass Tether. So given that, that means some number of people are opting out of Tether to go to Circle, or Tether is not growing, so they're not adopting Tether. So the market statistics show that there is some lack of growth in Tether and surging growth in Circle. Either that means Circle is getting 100% of new dollars, or some number of dollars from Tether are moving over. It's hard to know because it's unregulated, right? So Tether is stagnant when compared to Circle. That tells us something. I think there's an equal possibility that there could be a run on Tether, or that the folks at Tether took people's money and bought crypto in the early days at a very low price. In other words, you bought Tethers, and I bought Bitcoin at $1,000 or $3,000 or Ethereum at some very low price. So if they were gambling on crypto and that bet worked out, Tether could have 250 billion in Bitcoin somewhere. They could have just been gambling with this money, or maybe they gave loans to other crypto companies that are worth a bunch of money and that they've had a huge markup. So it could be that they realized this because they're insiders and made incredible, phenomenal, prescient bets. And they are so far ahead that they would be like somebody who took a bunch of people's money from their retirement accounts and won a ton of poker tournaments and 5x the money, took all the profits. And so if there was a run, they would be able to fill it in, right? I think it's an equal chance that they did something crazy like that because they're a crazy, I've never seen a crazy organization like this. Not since Madoff or Theranos or Nikola have I seen crazy behavior like that. Now, that doesn't mean that they're a complete fraud. It means that they act in a very irresponsible, esoteric, crazy manner. That's why they're getting fines. That's why they're getting investigated. That's why they were banned in New York. That's why people have concerns. So there could be a contagion risk. I think it's a 50-50. Or it could be they're sitting on a pile of Bitcoin in some wallet somewhere, and they've made such a fortune gambling with other people's money that there's no way for there to be a run. And that's why they're so cocky. I mean, it does add up, right? So then the question you'd have to ask is, if Bitcoin collapsed down to $3,500 again, right? Which it did from 20 to 3,500, from 64 to 30, I think. I mean, there's been a couple of these dips. What if Bitcoin took an 80% dive because it got hacked or banned or taxed, or everybody decided they want it to be in Solana? I know people have an argument against each of these scenarios, but let's just say that did happen. Then Tether has a run and their reserve is gone. Would be pretty devastating for them. In either way, regulation's coming. Everybody understands that there is a big risk here, and people are working probably inside of Tether and certainly inside our government to make sure that there is not a contagion. So I think that's a good thing. And I think that's why the investigation we did, when I'm using investigation kind of in air quotes here, because we're not like, we're basically reporting on what people were actually investigating or doing. So I'm kind of proud of the work we did there because it's got a pretty big Jim Cramer, ourselves, Financial Times, Bitfinex, all these great folks focusing on this are putting a spotlight on this saying, hey, don't know this is a fraud, but it doesn't seem very clean either. Sunlight is the best disinfection. Sunlight is the best disinfectant after all. Okay, next question.
This question is from George. What do you think of the wearable device market? Are you using any currently, and do you feel the efficiency is tangible? I'm developing a continuous glucose monitor for diabetics in emerging markets.
I do think so. I did the continuous glucose monitor from NutriSense. Full disclosure, we're an investor in them. There's obviously levels as their competitor. And I think those products are awesome. And I think everybody should have continuous glucose monitoring, especially anybody who gets obese, which I was. I hit a peak of 213. Today I was 178. I was 196 when I came back from Italy, and I'm 178 today. So I'm down 18 pounds in 9 weeks or so, about 2 pounds a week. Pretty proud of that. Glucose monitoring was one of the ways I did it. It turned out when I ate ice cream, my glucose didn't spike that much, but if I ate cereal, bread, pizza, it went bonkers. So you just change your eating habits based on it. I did the Oura Ring for a while. I keep losing it, and it's too fat for me to type, and my job is typing. So, less Oura Ring for me. I love the Fitbit, but they kept breaking on me. So I went to the Apple Watch, and I just saw Kevin, who made the Apple Watch this past weekend, just randomly ran into him. And I said, congratulations. The first and the third, I stopped using and I gave away, but the sixth is really good. And he was like, thanks. I'm glad we got it right in the sixth. I also use the 8 Sleep bed, and I'm a small investor in 8 Sleep. And I think that bed is great. So I think Quantified Self is great. I think everybody should do it. And continued success with it. I think continuous glucose monitors are something that anybody who gets 10, 20 pounds overweight should use, because when you see what happens to your body, the different order in which you eat food. I was noticing that if I ate my protein and salad first and then ate the carbs, my blood didn't spike, which I read up online said was the way to do it. So now I'll eat some vegetables and protein, and then, afterwards, if I want to have a little pasta, I have a little pasta. It's no big deal. So I think they're great. Keep working on it. Okay, let's take another question.
This question is from Michael. Is there a top 3 checklist that every angel investor / venture capitalist should ask themselves before investing in a company to minimize negative externalities caused by the investment?
There isn't a checklist, and we should make one. So let's put that on the docket for next year, is the angel investor checklist. And I wrote a book, but I never did a checklist, and I teach a course. Read the book Angel. And I wrote that book 3 years ago. Almost all of the advice is, I think, rock solid and timeless. I wrote it with a timeless thing in mind. And I do go over the questions you can ask. And it's like for 10 or 20 bucks. If you're an angel investor, it's basically free. Second, I do a course called Angel.University. All the proceeds from that go to charity. You may have seen yesterday, I donated $10,000 to clean up 10,000 pounds of garbage for Mr. Beast. That came from the Angel University profits. And when I say profits, we market that course. We take out the marketing expense. Any of the proceeds, the profits, we give to charity. Why do I do that? I want to get more people angel investing. So we do a little bit of marketing on the margins, and then I don't need to make money from it, but I want people to show up. And when rich people get something for free, they don't show up. And when people don't pay for something, they don't show up. So that's my new philosophy of this stuff. We did Founder University. It's $700 to go to Founder University for 12 weeks. But if you come to all 12 weeks, we give you the $700 back. So we looked at like Stripe and how to charge back, and it turns out we can charge you back no problem in that amount of time. So you show up for 12 weeks, we charge you back. And obviously, if somebody has an excuse absence, they make a baby, or I don't know, they get sick, we would obviously return their money. But we had 100 people sign up, and they're all showing up every week. So I find that compliance is important. Okay. And we do have a link to the founder checklist, thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. thisweekinstartups.com/checklist. Okay. Let's take one more question, Nick.
All right, hold on. I'm looking for one.
Okay. Oh, here's one about YouTube. I'm sorry, about Uber. Uber on Thursday. Uber earnings on Thursday. Yum, yum. Let's do that one.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, another question. Nick.
This question is from Patrick. He asks, he says Uber earnings on Thursday. Yum, yum. Would you like to respond?
Yes. Yum, yum. Still own a huge portion of my Uber stake and plan on holding it forever. I think the company is amazing. I think they're going to do fantastic. One thing I read was there were now a record 135 hedge funds who have bought into Uber, and they believe it's undervalued, including my friend Brad Gerstner, who's been on All In and on This Week in Startups, one of the great hedge fund investors. He's got a huge position he's been building. And, the thing I look at with Uber is how focused are they on their top 2 money printing categories, food delivery and cars, driving and rides, rather. So rides is coming back. They need more drivers, but the price went up and people are paying high prices. I think the average Uber is now $20. The thing I'm concerned about is the wait time. Okay, well, I believe that people are going back to work because they're realizing the prices have gone up. Everybody was saying, if the prices go up, people will stop taking Ubers. It's simply not true. People are willing to pay more for Ubers. It was subsidized for a long time to do growth. Now it can't be subsidized anymore because we need to get drivers on the road, and the Great Resignation and people getting stimmy checks or people reconsidering if they want to work at all. And, people had their rent subsidized or abated or paid for. People had unemployment insurance. So I think COVID and the pandemic gave them this beautiful delivery business that became over $1 billion a week. And then I think the ride business is coming back. And once they get the time down, because I think it's, in most cities, where I would experience like 1 to 7 minute wait times, it's like 7 to 15 minute wait times. My personal theory as an Uber shareholder for 11 years since the company launched has always been when wait times are under 10 minutes, Uber is the best option, hands down. Price doesn't really matter. It's the convenience of having an under 10-minute wait time. When the wait time's over 10 minutes, people look at other options. Oh, I'm going to drive myself. Oh, I'm going to get a bicycle or take a city bike, or I'll take some other option. So it's essential that they have enough drivers on the road to get under 10 minutes. I think they probably do that half and half in a major city. For people who are watching live, how long does it take you to get an Uber and a Lyft today versus the old days? So 2 numbers. In the old days, I used to get an Uber in X minutes. In the pandemic, or recently, I've been getting an Uber or Lyft in this many minutes. I noticed that cabs, yellow cabs, have been getting more rides. Why is that? Well, because if an Uber takes 15 or 20 minutes and a yellow cab comes by, you jump in the yellow if you're in a rush. It's essential for Uber and Lyft to get under that 10-minute threshold in my mind. In London, old days, 3 minutes, now 15 to 20, which is shocking. See, Ben makes a really great point there. And I think Ben agrees with me. If it's let's just say 3 minutes versus 15 minutes, okay, you're going to look for hailing, right? Old days less than 7, today 15 at least in Paris. Great. This is great real time. This is why I love the Noti gang. So much great feedback we're getting in real time from my live audience. So when you see those numbers, it's roughly double to 5x. It needs to get lower. Oh, and Patrick says, hey, no focus on freight. I know Lior. Lior's been on this program. He's amazing. The freight business is growing on a percentage basis, amazing. But that is not anywhere near the scale of the other businesses, but it's going to be highly profitable. So that's a future bet. So I'd put that in the future bet, like Oculus or Waymo. It's a future bet it's a future bet that's generating revenue now. So again, I think if you believe in buying low and selling high, and I don't like to give advice here, so don't consider this financial advice. I'm just taking you through how I'm placing my bet. I'm betting Uber will hit the $60, $72 a share that the analysts have it at some point. And I'm willing to hold it for the next 10 years. I don't need to take the tax event. I'll just sit here on the shares. I believe it's going to do great. And I think the pandemic made it a stronger company, just like I think it made Airbnb a stronger company and DoorDash a stronger company. West Palm Beach Airport is still the same before and after less than 10 minutes. Great. So that's good to know, Christian. I think a lot of people are seeing that. My dad is a chauffeur in Tampa. It's bonkers busy there right now. Uber prices up, but having some issues with wait times and bad driver issues. I agree. In New York City, I take 2 minutes now before it used to take 2 minutes before it was 8 to 15. I think you had it backwards there. Oh, and here somebody says, when I got hired at Uber pre-IPO, I was quoted $60 a share, so I'm still underwater. I bet you they'll reprice those options at some point if it doesn't get there. Or you can ask for more at the new price. All right. It's been a great show today. Thank you so much to the Noti gang for showing up for me. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.